Paul Krugman's with me, the Nobel Prize winning economist. He joins me. Now then, Paul, right. Well, what do you make of it? Reciprocal tariffs on a general wide scale. It seems, I mean, provided it's not 20-30%, but it's, matching tariff for tariff, it seems a fairly fair way to readjust US terms of trade.
Well, there are only a few countries out there that have significant tariffs on US products. India is one of them. Although India has, Indian tariffs are vastly lower than they used to be, but they're still significant. Brazil still has significant tariffs, though again, they've liberalized a lot. The European Union has practically no tariffs on US products. They, basically wealthy countries have very low tariff rates on each other. But the announcement from the White House suggested that they're going to call anything they feel like a tariff. So they might call value-added taxes tariffs. And if they do that, then we're on a full-scale trade war with the European Union. They're not tariffs, but if the White House decides to call them tariffs and they're a major source of revenue on the other side of the Atlantic, then we're in crazy territory. So I have no idea. The amazing thing about all of this, I mean, if you want to break in, but there isn't any coherent argument here. And there doesn't even seem to be a clearly defined interest group. This is just that Donald Trump has a thing about tariffs and has decided that he is at least going to talk loudly about imposing tariffs. And what he actually does, God knows.
Now, on that point, looking at the list, we've got tariffs, we've got taxes, VATs, we've got non-tariff barriers, unfair. We've also got exchange rate deviations and unfair limitations. So we are very much looking at the non-tariff environment, the non-direct environment, or protection of barriers, which, as you say, takes you off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, a VAT it's just a sales tax. And of course, it's a sales tax that the administration is complicated to describe, but essentially it's a sales tax on everything, which includes imported goods. So it is a tax that U.S. exports face. So if you decide to call a national sales tax a tariff because, among other things, it taxes our exports, then, as you say, we're off to the races. This is essentially, I don't think this is a set of criteria that will determine what happens. This is a list of things that will give Trump an excuse to impose whatever tariff he feels like imposing on anybody he feels like imposing it on.
The inflationary effect, if there are small increases to meet, as you say, EU tariff rates, it's negligible in terms of inflation. But if we get the sort of 25-30% that we were having for Canada and or Mexico, or 10% for China across the board, then the number we saw on inflation yesterday is already worrying. Are you concerned?
Well, a bit. Now, if the inflation numbers, if you're really an inflation maven, you looked at yesterday's CPI, then you looked at today's PPI, and the two of them combined actually make you fairly relaxed about the PCE, which will be coming in later in the month, which is what the Fed actually looks like. So it's not, the inflation numbers per se so far are not a big deal, but the inflation is clearly not dead. It's not something that's safe. And we're talking about anything like 25% tariffs on a wide range of trading partners, on a wide range of goods, is going to add 2 to 3 points to the price level. And so that is not something that would, and at the same time, you have Trump demanding that the Fed lower interest rates. Well, that ain't going to happen if you're going to hit prices with all of these tariffs.
So stay with me, because I want to move on to our next area of discussion, which you have been writing about. But just a bit of background. The White House has started firing probationary workers at 2 agencies, federal agencies. Scores of people have been dismissed. Donald Trump and Elon Musk say they're going after waste and fraud, and this is how they put the case.
I'm going to ask Elon to tell you a little bit about it and some of the things that we found, which are shocking. billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse.
What we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even going to Americans. So I think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans.
Now, some of the examples of frauds have been flat out wrong. For example, the president claimed the US spent millions of dollars on condoms for Hamas. Musk admitted that was inaccurate. An attorney who specializes in government contracting said Musk is being disingenuous, telling the New York Times, fraud and corruption are illegal, and what DOGE has identified so far are payments that this administration disagrees with or views as wasteful. Calling these things fraudulent or corrupt misrepresents the finding. The White House responds to that by citing a congressional report estimating up to $500 billion of fraud. Paul Krugman, you have been writing about this, that actually in many cases we're getting just blanket, there's fraud, there's corruption, but there's no evidence, not evidence that we could sort of hang your hat on.
No, the only solid evidence we have is some clear evidence that DOGE has no idea what it's doing. Somebody saw a line item that had aid for sexually transmitted diseases in Gaza and didn't read the rest of the paragraph, which said Gaza province of Mozambique, not the Gaza Strip. So, I mean, and we are trusting these people who can't tell Africa from the Middle East, to find waste and fraud in the government. They have been It's actually kind of amazing that they haven't managed to come up with a single concrete example of fraud that DOGE has identified. Right. It's all just, we don't like stuff.
So to the core point that the administration says, we have to move fast, we have to prevent the inertia, we have to stop people from stopping us doing this. Therefore, yes, mistakes will be made, but they are worth it for the greater good of cutting government waste. What do you say to that?
If they were going after anything that might even be a plausible source of government waste, then, we could have that discussion, but they aren't. I mean, so far, it's almost all about payroll. And if anybody looks at the federal budget, you find out that payroll is 6% of total federal spending. And a lot of those are clearly jobs that need doing. If you were, there's one really known area where the government is spending a lot that it shouldn't, which is on Medicare Advantage plans, where it's overpaying. And that's something like $80 billion a year of wasteful spending that we know about, which somehow hasn't been touched at all. So all of this is, as I said, when I first started writing about this, they're going where the money isn't, which makes it fairly clear that the goal here is not actually to control waste. The goal is to find a way to fire people we don't think are loyal, to shut down agencies whose mission we don't approve of, even though they've been duly authorized by congressional legislation. Right. I see no hint that waste and fraud are actually on the agenda at all.
I'm grateful to you, Paul, and we look forward to talking over the next few years as we work out exactly what's happening where. Thank you. Paul Krugman joined me tonight from New York. Grateful.